What's up, Dan Carraher? Welcome to the show, man. Great to see you.
Glad to be here. It's been a minute. Well,
It has
other
been a
since the
minute,
PGA show, but other
right?
than before that, it's been a little while.
Yeah, we ran into each other at the PGA show. It was good to catch up, and I was excited to have you on because, again, sort of under the not under the radar, but like not a whole lot, not a whole lot posted on social for you, aside from your awesome Instagram. So I'm excited to dig into some like technical stuff.
Yeah, I try to I won't say keep a low profile, but like I don't go out of my way to do any self promotion or kind of
No, I appreciate that. Like your students kind of do it all for you, right? I mean, it's like the results speak for themselves.
yeah, and I have I think a different opinion as far as like social media and content goes, I think, than most people, and I don't expect anybody to have the same opinion. But I use it all the time. I tell people I think instructional content on social media is like giving a hypochondriac to WebMD. Like I think it
Yeah.
does no good for anybody. So like I pretty much don't put any instructional information out there because I feel like for the one person it's going to help, it's probably going to hurt 10. Um,
Yeah.
it's not really what actually came up in a post recently on my feed where somebody got mad for me not explaining that a drill that somebody was doing in the video. And I'm like, it's very purposeful that I'm not explaining it.
Yeah.
Because the odds that you share the exact same problem with the same root cause is pretty close to zero.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's like you just post,
Mhm.
post a swing and post who it's about and then don't really give a whole lot of context, which I'm very similar to. Like I'll make give a little blurb of like, hey, here's what we're working on. But yeah, it just opens up a can of worms of people, the trolls jumping in.
Yeah, and well, you know me a little bit, so like
Oh yeah.
I'm not afraid to put someone in the foot. Like if someone, I always tell people, same thing I said in that post is, I'm gonna give you the energy that you right back that you give me. So if you come in like trolling and I'm better at it, and it's like you can play that game, and it's probably not gonna end well for you.
Yeah, you're one of the old school forum guys, right? Remember those
Yeah,
days?
yeah, it's pretty much dead. I occasionally post on GolfWorks still, but pretty much don't go anywhere other than the putter section and the junior section because I think the bad information that's in the junior section is parents that don't have a clue trying to help. Like, and to me, I just want to add at least my life experience to kind of say this is a reality of how this kind of works,
Yeah.
and if it can prevent people from kind of going down the wrong rabbit hole or I think junior golf is kind of like weddings. I think there's a ton of people trying to separate families from their money, uh,
Yeah, that's a good way to
and
put it.
probably try to overcoach and overcharge for almost everything. Kind of high frequency, high dollar. Same thing. Do some people, if I wanted to be rich, I'd just start a junior tour because it's basically a mini tour, but you don't have to pay out any prize money. So
Yeah.
the guys I know that own junior tours live in some very nice houses.
Yeah, AJGA, right? It's like kind of
Well,
have to
and
do
yeah,
it, but it's like,
hurricane and
yep.
we're lucky here that I tell a lot of my kids like if you want to stay in state, and I have pretty good connections with most of the coaches in state, that they don't have to play any of it. Um,
Right. Well,
that
you're in Florida, so it's kind of
yeah,
that helps, right? That you're in the one of the big five.
yeah, especially for boys, like if you win multiple FJTs or even one FJT, like you're going to like one of my kids won an FJT at 15, hadn't done a ton before that. And has done okay after that, but like as soon as he won, contact from like Illinois, like the schools that you wouldn't think would necessarily be paying attention to the local slash state
Hmm.
run junior golf tour. But I would argue that a lot of the kind of Midwest opens on AJGA, so non-invitationals and non like elite basically you need to be fully exempt to even think about getting in.
Right.
All your just regular middle of the year kind of opens, I would argue, are no stronger than the like exempt Florida stuff. And so for most of these kids, and I teach in an area that's probably a little less crazy affluent across the board, there's money, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not South Florida. Like we're really close to Georgia. So
Right.
there's more kind of blue collar kids that can't really afford to travel the country or even playing like one or two in-state tournaments a month is a lot for most of them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we kind of table that for a little bit because I want to get into your a lot of your juniors and college kids and how you train them. But I want to take you back. We were just talking a little bit before we started recording, like when we first met back in. I kind of did the math. I think it was like 2010. Does that sound about right? It was like the first tweet up, right? This tells you how long ago it was. John Graham and myself put together what we called a tweet up, which was like everybody on Twitter, golf professionals, hey, let's meet at Miller's Ale House. And we had a pretty good kind of showing, like 20,
There's
25 guys came through, right? And then I met you. I think that's where I met TJ. Claude Harmon was there.
yeah,
Um,
some pretty, I would say, people that were probably very under the radar then, but have turned
oh,
out
yeah.
to be uh impactful in the golf business.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't even think I had Twitter then. I think that was just like
How'd you even
the,
find out about it, right?
I'm pretty sure it was like John Graham or somebody from uh that also posted on forums and whatnot
Yeah,
that I should come.
yeah, for sure. And I just remember this little kid in a hoodie and a hat. Looked like you're about 12. And I think you're probably 22, 23 or something like that. And I think you and TJ had just gotten back from Mac school. Does that sound about right?
I So I've actually never been to a Mac school. I'm
Oh,
very Mac adjacent.
yeah, okay.
I was kind of out before I was in. Um,
I was going to ask
from
you
what
when you
I've
got kicked
from
out. I
what
thought you were in there.
from from what I've been told, like he definitely knows who I am, and I think I'm too big of an acquaintance with too many people that have been kicked out to
Yeah, both of
ever
us,
be allowed. Um, but I do come from a kind of a golfing machine background, so like
for sure.
I mean, and I know enough people that have I would say talked enough, and just there's enough stuff out there that nowadays can't really keep things under wraps. That
No,
the pattern and most of and what he's done has evolved so much even in the last 10 years versus what it was in like the 90s and 2000s. It's kind of what vintage math do you really want to look at as far as his teaching style is going to vary drastically depending on what decade you choose.
yeah. Yeah, I just think Doherty was there, John Doherty, mutual friend, because those guys were
Yes.
they were deep into it at that point. I think we were actually staying together, and we stayed together 4 or 5, 6 PGA shows, and as we've talked about on the podcast a few times with some of the guys that were there, some epic condo discussions were had.
Yeah, and yeah, Doc used to call me, I'm sure after like that was pre-marriage and pre where I could be up super late at night talking on the phone from somebody in Tennessee. Um, but yeah, there was plenty of very late night conversations that probably went way too late, lasted way too long. But they educational all the way around.
Oh, for sure. So I think when we were introduced, somebody said, "Yeah, that's Rain Man." When's the last time you've been called Rain Man? And give me the backstory of why you were nicknamed Rain Man.
I think there's some people that still definitely call it me that, or some Rain Dan has been uh,
Oh, it's evolved.
something that's been said. Um, I mean, I think it probably just came from people probably being slightly uncomfortable. Like, I'm a fairly smart guy. Um, and kind of entered the golf business at I would say an extremely young age compared to most people. And then I tend to look younger than I am. So I think like, even years before I met you, I was teaching tour players that were twice my age. Um, and that always had, I think in the beginning, there was a lot of kind of reluctance to be seen because it looked like a high schooler was teaching somebody on tour. And then when people start playing well, it doesn't really matter. Like,
That's
all
right.
that kind of goes out the window. But I think, yeah, I think it kind of, I was the kid that had an answer for every question, or at least tried to. And so it just became some people would call, and that became the quick nickname, I guess. I don't know if it was, I think it was Bob Townsend that probably started it. He was buddies with Doherty, and then I think that's then how it
Yeah, I think from what I
telephone gamed its way across the
yeah, yeah.
internet and the world.
Because I think I remember when we first met. It's funny, shows you how like stuff that I remember back in the day. It's like I think I asked you that question, like why they call you Rain Man. It's like you said because I can hit all the patterns.
You can do a lot of, I'm
Your
pretty good
swing
at
is so
mimicking.
dirty, dude. Like I want to get into like how it evolved, but in your career, but yeah, it was
It's
so
moved a little bit. Yeah.
yeah,
I've always felt like, I mean, to me, like how I know anything about golf, instruction came from me as a kid. We grew up, don't want to be disrespectful, so I'm not going to say poor, but did not have money for golf lessons, barely had money for golf. So I was a kid that went to the library and checked out the maximum number of books that were allowable um, at any given time, and then would return them and check out more. So I'm pretty sure I read every golf book that was available at the public library, starting from a very young age. And then was a pretty decent skateboarder. And so I had a video camera when I think not a lot of people had video cameras, like when that wasn't a super common thing at a pretty young age. There wasn't many 12-year-olds running around with relatively high-end video equipment. Um, but like I'm sure they're somewhere, who knows where the tapes are, but
like to see
I think
the skateboard videos.
well, no, those still are around, but I have somewhere have some high eight or mini DV video of me like swinging in the backyard at like 10, 11, 12. Like I would literally hit balls over it. Well, statute of limitations has long since
Yeah, yeah.
expired, but we lived near a golf course, which is now Atlantic Beach Country Club.
Mm.
And so I would hit golf balls over the house across the street, basically onto property that was oh, whatever, 200 yards on the other side of their property.
Who got you interested in the game? Like, if was that like your first? I mean, obviously skateboarding, and then but like in other sports weren't involved. Like, who did you have somebody that got you into it?
Uh, Kinda. So no one in my family really what I would consider played golf. Like it was my grandfather definitely dabbled in golf and liked golf, but like I would say me playing golf got him to the golf course way more. Like I'm not really sure how much he golfed by the time I started golfing without me. Like I think that kind of became the
Hmm.
reason he golfed. But for some reason there was like a plastic club probably when I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I know that I was hitting like fake balls in the house, and it didn't take long before stuff started breaking, and they realized like one, this can't happen at the house, and two, like we have to actually like find a way, get clubs and like go to a driver. Like
Right.
this has to be a outdoor official activity uh, relatively quickly. But growing up, I played kind of every sport imaginable. I would actually say that until genetics ruled me out of a lot of sports, I golf was probably the sport I was the worst at.
Really?
Until probably I was like 14 or 15.
What was your best?
Uh, the one I didn't probably stick with it long enough, but I was probably the best at was rookie. It's
Oh,
probably,
really? Okay.
and then baseball, I was quite good. Like we made it to the whatever state championships of the Babe Ruth World Championships, and we're pretty good on a travel baseball team with a bunch of guys that
Yeah.
ended up playing for a living. So like was decent at all of those, but I probably entered high school at 4'10", so baseball became really most of the stuff other than golf and skateboarding became I even if I was good enough, you were kind of overlooked, like you were typecasted, and it kind of writing was on the wall that not a great opportunity. I didn't really like soccer. That was probably another one I could have been okay with, but no interest to me. And so golf, I got good at golf as soon as I cared to be really good at golf, kind of like it. When golf was just the thing I played in the summer with my grandfather, and then it still interested me. And then like I would say seventh grade started taking it a little more seriously, but it was still I was in a junior program that was 35 minutes across town,
Mm.
and single mom basically was like a 1 or 2 weekend a month kind of thing. Like wasn't something I could do real until we moved when I was in middle school, uh,
You grew up where?
Jacksonville area.
Okay. Okay. So it's similar where you're at. Gotcha.
Yeah, so grew up where I was in much closer. So we actually grew. I went to the junior program at Jack's Beach, which is now way more famous than it was when I was a kid because they've redone it and the no laying up guys like to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was it was a muni that as a junior I got to play for, I believe it was $4 unlimited golf. Uh, and that's why we would drive across town to go there. And then we moved a couple miles away from there. And then it became, I could go there and then I got a job there in high school. And then it became, I was there pretty much anytime I was not at school. And even sometimes I was probably supposed to be in school.
So that's when
And
you
then,
started the ignition happened and you started getting better. Like, 'cause I know you got pretty good pretty quick.
yeah, it kind of, I think I had an experience like a lot of people do. Like, I think improvement is generally not nonlinear. Um, and I think what never got me, I always worked at it, but I would never got good because I would get frustrated. Like I would put in this
Mm.
work and it's kind of the long-term gains would have been there, but there wasn't enough short-term satisfaction to kind of
Mm.
until it became, I'm gonna figure this out because there's nothing else really. Like I was ultra competitive and always played sports. So it was like it probably also hooked me that it was the thing that I didn't wasn't easy to figure out. Like it wasn't like
Right.
I was instantly like all-star whatever. It took a while for me to kind of pure athletic ability wasn't enough to kind of be good.
Yeah. You needed information and some coaching and
But no, I've actually never taken in reality never really taken a golf lesson.
yeah, that's what I know. I was like, and that probably led you to your curiosity of how all the stuff worked, right?
Yeah, I definitely filmed everything, read everything, tried. I feel like about my golf swing and how it's moved is I don't believe on kind of experimenting on students. So I always kind of experimented on myself. Like it was
Right.
always, and so my opinion is like if you truly understand something, you should be able to demonstrate it. And if you can't, you probably don't understand it at a high enough level to teach it.
Mm.
Um, you might understand it, like you could pass a test on it, but
Yeah.
there's a difference being able to pass a calculus test and standing in the front of the classroom and teaching calculus. And I know not all great teachers are great players, and I don't think you even have to necessarily be a great player from a scoring perspective, but I think if you're talking about how the body moves, and you're trying
Yeah.
to tell someone how to get there, I think you should probably be able to do it yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think you got to be able to at least demonstrate to a level to. show some expertise. I mean, yeah, it's something that actually just had Humor on the podcast and talked to some of my colleagues and friends, and we've talked about that, like the level of understanding I think nowadays from the coaching industry is probably lacking compared to like the knowledge that people are collecting. Does that make sense? Like all the certifications and all the information that's out there, it's like, yeah, I can sort of regurgitate some things to people, but the level of understanding is probably not there. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. I think I'm not going to put any names out there, but recently
Oh,
had
come on.
I would say I had a student that is not the only coach he works with. Like he kind of talks to everybody, but he got
Hmm.
a text message from a coach explaining what he would work on, and he shared it to me, and it might as well have been like I would guess 95% of teaching pros wouldn't understand 90% of what this text said, and he definitely didn't. Um, and you know, and he was like, it sounds like he's just using big words to try to sound smart.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I countered a little bit because I think that's how it comes across. And I think coaches have to be careful about using, I would say, you know, biology or anatomy terms,
Right.
and especially very often misusing them. And the reason for that is most of the people you're talking to aren't going to know what you're saying.
Yeah, you got to know your audience, your
And
student,
then
right?
the problem is when you run across the person that does and you say it wrong, you lose all credibility.
Mhm. That's a
Um,
great point.
and so to me, like the best class I ever took in college, and most of college was a waste on me. Not that it's a waste on everybody. But I was a engineering major, and
Right.
one of the classes I had to take was called Fundamentals of Technical Presentation. Uh, the teacher was a retired radio host, so had been in media her whole life, knew how to speak, knew nothing technical, like very simple.
Hmm.
And you were given very complex subjects, and you had to do a presentation, and they varied in length depending on which topic and whatever. Um, but it was if you went 1 second over, it was an automatic F.
Really?
And then your grade was based on how well she understood what you were presenting at the end of it. So like I did like for instance, I had to do a 10-minute presentation on the internal combustion engine and explain how an engine works in under 10 minutes at a high enough level to where someone who knows nothing about engines could understand.
That sounds like a good teaching exercise.
That's why I said I think it's the
Yeah,
best class I had to take.
that's cool.
Extremely frustrated in the class.
How'd you do with that on the
Uh,
presentation?
all right. Like I think I got a either a B plus or an A minus in the class, but I think that's was way above average for like that class was one that like very intelligent people got C's in because
Hmm.
like it was almost like you have to prove how smart you are by treating me like I'm a 5-year-old and making sure that like you can if you truly understand it, you can explain it in the most layman's terms possible. But like you didn't get any credit for sounding smart.
Hmm.
And I
That's
think
that's pretty deep.
golf needs more of that.
Yeah,
And I
I
think when
agree.
I got into teaching, I taught almost immediately started teaching like elite level players. Like that was pretty much
So how did that happen?
relative.
Like paint a picture of like your first job and like how does that scenario even come about?
Yeah, so even in high school, I kind of helped a lot of kids on the team. Like it just became people knew that I read a lot And then I do a lot, and I was always film like so like if someone had a question, they would ask, and then I turned pro way too early and wasn't good enough, but I tried to play. And people that I was playing against, that I would say were underachieving, started asking questions, and
Mm.
I basically said that like if I have to take time away from what I'm doing to help you, it's going to cost you, and that's kind of how things started.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good
And
way
so
to
it's
get tour players.
very unofficial, like, and it
Yeah.
was very, and I, this area is pretty ridiculous as far as golf, as far as historical, like junior golf, amateur golf, um, and the money games that used to be out at Jack's Beach when I was a kid were, I would say, absurd at times.
Mm.
Uh, but that's where a lot of it, like good amateurs and kind of like at one point, well, I got asked to leave and not allowed to play anymore, but they did this skin game that was you got paid front nine and overall and then skins. And they didn't factor in the fact that one nine's easier than the other.
Mm.
So they just split the points evenly on both sides. And I never won the overall, but I won the same side 14 weeks in a row. And that became a problem because they thought it was some kind of sandbagging or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like front nine significantly easier than the back. And so it'd be like I'd have to pull 42 points or something, and I would pull exactly 42 points. It would be like 31-37. And so the points total would not move, but I kept winning because I would win a side and maybe a
Yeah.
skin. And this is in like 100 plus people. So like you're talking
Wow.
sometimes four figures. Like the numbers got pretty big for a young kid. Like, but most of the time it was like several $100s for an afternoon of 18 holes.
That's pretty good for yeah, like
And at the
at that
time, yeah,
time.
that was good money. Like that was
Absolutely.
that's why I got asked to leave. It was enough money to, but like a lot of the guys that I played against ended up like those were some of the first students I had. Um, and then I actually had trouble getting hired most places. Actually interviewed at the Tour Academy and was told um, in the interview that I was the like most overqualified, knowledgeable person they've had for an entry level position, but I look too young.
Oh boy. Is that still there in that interview
The one I did,
place?
yes, because it was at World Golf Village. It was before the
Yeah, yeah.
one at TPC had opened, and I was basically interviewing in, I think that was like '05 or '06 for the when the one at TPC was. Oh, basically, the plan was I was trying to get my foot in the door before that one opened, so that
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
I,
Who was the director of instruction? Was I can't remember at that
uh,
time.
Travis Fulton.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's Travis. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And
all right.
so
So, moving on.
he
Like,
was.
did you ever
I will
get
say he was
pulled?
not the one I interviewed with.
Okay.
So it was
All right.
not him. Um,
All right.
but uh, I ended up working for Golf Tech because they would hire me, and that was
And
at
who were some of those early players that started like you started working with? Do you remember?
um, yeah, a couple like mainly Hooters tour players, and then some decent juniors in the Central Florida area. Um, and then working at Golf Tech, so I kind of taught both extremes. I taught players at an elite level, and then
Hmm.
a lot of the people that class of fundamentals of technical presentation helped a lot of kind of 25 to 30 handicaps that and at Golf Tech, especially at that time when you're talking like we had a launch monitor, which a lot of places didn't. And
Right.
you're talking about three early days of 3D, like a bunch of numbers people are seeing that most golf pros don't know what they're looking at, let alone consumer.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was a good environment because I taught a lot of lessons in a very short period of time. And I think did well because of I understood the technology and the
Right.
relationships. Like a lot of it is, I mean, most of the golf swing is pattern recognition. Um, and to me, like puzzles, like that's probably where the Rainman thing cut. Like I'm pretty good at looking at something pretty quickly and figuring it out.
So was there a mentor behind that pattern recognition piece, or any influences aside from books? I mean, it sounded like more videos, and like
Yeah,
how did you come
and like
about that piece of it?
yeah, well, yeah, and just reading everything and taking some of what I thought was good from what someone said and throwing out anything that wasn't. And then a lot of the best part about the golf tech in 3D is like I think the funny thing is the tour averages, and you can see it with who they currently in the patterns they kind of push people to, is but they didn't know how to read their own numbers for the most part, I would say. Um, but if I wasn't teaching them how to break, I wasn't walking the floor trying to sell because I'm not a good salesman. Um, I would strap myself in and hit shots and start fooling around and
Mm,
kind of doing. And so, like, I'm sure now they understand it, but it's essentially like
yeah.
understanding that forward bend and shoulder tilt at the top, max, meaning shoulders were turning perpendicular to the spine, but like the fact that they didn't explain that to coaches or that forward bend in their numbers went from 36 degrees to basically right around zero. But if you taught a centered pivot, you were bad because they were teaching the move off the ball. Like what they were trying to explain in the video did not match the numbers that their own data supported at the time.
Ah, interesting.
And,
Yeah.
and so, like,
Because
I think
did you
there's,
have did you have any stack and tilt background at all? Like, or is it?
yeah, I went to,
I feel like you had a little bit.
yeah, I got nice enough to be invited to a couple schools with, I won't be in my, um, we definitely have some of the Mac adjacency that I'm definitely always going to be guilty by association. Um,
Yeah.
that's actually where I met Doherty, and well, that was super early, like mid 2000s. Um,
Yeah.
and like took like I'd read started reading Golf Machine at like 12, so a lot of it was in there. Like
That's
same thing I say about
insane.
Mac, like it's all in there. Um, but yeah, like to me, the more beneficial, like I didn't go to no school that I go to was I really like, oh, I'm getting taught like my golf swing. Like I just sat and watched
Mhm.
Mike and Andy and filmed more of like what they were teaching than anything on myself. And so to me, like same thing as like I helped out at Core, and Foley not long after that. Um, but same thing, like
Yeah,
it's
definitely more down that road for sure. Those days seemed like too when he was. That was about when he started teaching Tiger, right?
yeah, I was
Or
around
just
then.
before. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I bet you were.
and yeah, and like I got there because TrackMan was relatively new at that time, and I've been using Radar since 2005, and so I knew it better than most. And um, he's not here anymore, but I knew Ryan Corbin, who was one of Sean, almost like Sean's little brother or
Hmm.
um, second dad. And Ryan introduced us, and Sean liked that I knew a lot about the things that he wanted to know more about.
So were you still employed with Golf Tech, or did you go like work
No, that was after. So
for
actually,
him?
when I
This is yeah. Give me the lineage. I know it's tough to like jump
so
around, but
yeah, I worked for Golf Tech till I believe it was early '09, and then moved to maybe it was oh wait, somewhere around there, and then I moved to San Diego. Um, so I'd met Townsend, who I think started the whole Rainman thing, at the one school with Andy and Mike, and he was bugging me for at least 6 months of when are you gonna come out here and like we'll pay you and you need to like basically educate us. And I kind of figured at that time that as someone who grew up in Florida, that and my whole family's from the Midwest, so I spent summers in Minnesota most of my life growing up, but like never really been to the West Coast, is that if I didn't do it then, it was probably never going to happen. Um, so I kind of
mm,
made the decision
yeah,
that I had no responsibility, so might as well go for it. Uh, so went there, was there for like a little over a year and realized how expensive things were very quickly, and realized that from doing I was doing golf schools kind of all over the country, so I would essentially be there, but then book something and go travel. And I realized real quickly that no matter where I went, I could kind of charge Southern California money at the time. So I
mm-hmm,
can move back home where cost of living is infinitely cheaper, um, and still charge the same amount of money. And so I did that. Um, and I went to school at
where did you
UCS
teach? Right.
in San Diego. Yeah, a place called
No,
San
no. After
Diego
you went
Golf.
from San Diego back to Jacksonville.
So I was living in Jacksonville, um, teaching a little bit of Jack's Beach on the side as kind of I would say, but my history there was kind of like, don't make it obvious that you're giving golf lessons, so we won't stand in the way. Um, but I couldn't like advertise or anything. And then I started teaching uh like 2 or 3 days a week down at Orange County National in Orlando with the whole Sean
Yeah.
scenario. Um, and so basically I would book where I would sun up to sundown 3 days in a row. Would a lot of times stay with Ryan or just book a hotel and uh, beach and then come home and then do. I was doing probably like 5 or 6 golf schools a year, where like I do a 2 or 3 day golf school, live by myself with a couple other people. Figured out real quick I don't like
Mm.
doing those. Um,
Big group session, like it's average golfers or like good players.
yeah, yeah, it was like a lot of the forum crowd, so like high golf IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a way to maximize profit for sure, because why people do group coaching, period. Um, but my
Right.
attitude, I felt like nobody got their money's worth. Um, my attitude was always that it was much someone come to see me, still to this day, like if I were to do a golf school, someone could come to see me for probably a half day or 2 half days for the same one-on-one for the same price I would be charging to make it worthwhile to do a golf school. And that would be more at like a 6 to 8 to 1 ratio. And it just never made sense. Like it made sense financially. It never made sense from like a
Yeah.
ethics standpoint. I didn't feel like I was doing best for everyone involved.
Yeah. It's tough to spread enough to that big a group.
Yeah, I think, and I know people do it. And
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, it's the I have friends that do a lot of that. And they're very funny. I think for the certain type of person, it probably works very well. Um, I've definitely been more accused of being on the technical side, um, and would rather. It takes time. Like I'm not gonna leave a person until I feel like they have it. And so what happens is I definitely play favorites. still do, even with juniors. It's usually the opposite of what most people think, is my favorites aren't usually the best. My favorites are usually the ones that need the most attention. Um,
Hmm,
so
interesting.
like, just because I think that they value wise, that if I don't want to leave someone not getting it. So like, there's a group of kids and they're like the weakest link's generally going to get the most attention.
At your club right now, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. So the after school program where the volume of juniors fluctuates, but it basically includes. And my big thing is it always has to include one-on-one time. So like it includes one-on-one lessons and a group dynamic for the kind of. So I want them to
Okay.
be competitive. So there's a lot of, um, let's say, some gambling, usually some a lot of trash talk. Uh, they definitely don't want to lose, and
Love it.
I think that competitive environment is really good for kids. So I use the group dynamic more of the supervised practice, but way more for the competitive element than I do for the actual instruction. That's
Yeah.
usually done mainly in the one-on-one.
Gotcha. So tell the listeners where you're currently at now, what you're talking about, and then let's talk about how you train your kids because I think that's a great intro.
Yeah, I'm at the golf club at Southampton. It's right on the Jacksonville St. Augustine border, so pretty much the across the street back in those neighborhoods is essentially Jacksonville. So it's kind of technically St. Augustine, but it's barely St. Augustine.
Gotcha. How long have you been there?
From almost 7 years now. It's I think that zip code's been one of the fastest growing zip codes in the US for like a decade straight, and COVID didn't make it better.
It's a private facility or is it open like to the public?
Semi-private, so there's essentially it's a dual-sided driving range. Well, there's three basic driving ranges. There's a public tee with their entire own short game area. And then my tee box is probably as every bit as big as most driving ranges total. And then there's a member area, an entire short game area in the back that like probably the best short game. Well, the overall range, even the public side, probably the best public practice facility anywhere in the area. And then the backside is definitely, other than TPC, is probably the best practice facility and short game area in
Nice.
the area.
Yeah. A training building looks like, right? Facility that you're working
Yeah,
out of.
have that was a struggle to get. Uh, Now less so apparently. So kind of like the Field of Dreams is I taught all over Jacksonville for over a decade, basically telling anybody that would listen, like I'm willing to pay for the building, do whatever, like I just want what I want. Like it has nothing to do with money. I'm willing to fund it all. After 9 years, they were the one that would let me put it up. I still had to fund, like it's all out of my own pocket. And now, of course,
Really?
yeah, now of course, a bunch of places are build it like they have to. It's like they're keeping up with the Joneses. Yet I'm sure those course owners and or members would be disappointed to find out that I'm the one that paid to build it, as opposed to they're probably funding all
That's
of it for.
crazy. Wow. All right, we we need to talk about that off air.
Yeah.
That
Um,
is ridiculous.
and we're
What do you
still
got
trying
in
to
the
fund
building?
it.
Describe the building, and then I want to.
It's not huge.
How big is it?
It is. I have to do the math, but I think it's like between 600 and 700 square feet.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's a
there's
good
it's
size.
a
Couple bays.
one bay, but it's deep. So that there's, and then I have
Yeah.
a putting room, a separate kind of side room that has Sam and putting area. That might slowly be turning into like the machine shop, but
I was gonna say we're gonna talk about you building and designing putters here in a minute too, but all right. So
yeah.
talk. Let's talk about your some of your players because you worked with so many good players, and we can dig into your technology and how you train them. But start with Caitlin Schroeder. Talk about when you first met, and you can explain who she is for those of you that have been under a rock and don't know who she is. But like, give
Uh,
us like a as much as you can a detailed sort of path that you took her on from an early age to now she's in college at Alabama.
yeah, so I've actually known her dad. So her dad is the golf coach at UNF. Um, when I was in high school golf, he had kind of was, I think it was probably his first or second year as an assistant was my recruiting class. So I've known him for a very long time. We won't do the math on that one, but longer than 2 decades. Um, and so like I knew
Sure.
before I started teaching Caitlin, I knew who she was, like being back in this area. And she had seen some other people, two other people before me. And and when I got her, she was probably around 12, like it was somewhere in middle school, uh,
Middle
maybe
school, yeah.
13. Yeah. Very raw. So benefit with Caitlin is she's always been able, even when she was kind of just picking up golf, like when dad's a big influence, that she knows how to play golf. Like scoring was maybe a little more erratic than she wanted, but pretty good really quickly. Um, with a golf swing that probably made Lexi look like Robert Ross. Um, and she still has some of that. It's gotten way cleaner. But my big rule, especially with a player like that is really good at the many people would call intangibles. I think they're pretty tangible, but um,
Yeah.
is good head on her
Foundation.
shoulders. So she has speed. She's definitely athletic. Um, she's just understood the game of golf. So even when she wasn't playing, she played other sports and kind of, I think, rebelled against dad for a little while. But she'd been around golf her whole
Sure.
life. Dad was a good player. Was one of the top college golf coaches in the country. And so like even before she played, she had an understanding around golf. And then I think the other benefit is that even the whole time we were talking about like that peer to peer kind of thing, she was practicing with the men's college golf team at 12 years old. So her attitude was never, I want to be the best girl. Like it was, I want to be, she's around those guys all the time. So it was kind of like, I want to beat them. So like when it comes time to like chipping and putting
Right.
contest, it's against like all American D1 golfers, not other girls that are 12 years old.
Wow. So the environment
So
definitely shaped some of that.
yeah, and I think that's huge. That's why it's the only reason I do any group stuff is I think Gladwell pointed it out, and I think a bunch of others have kind of pointed out is that there's you can create a group dynamic. That's what it's good for. Is that the uh,
Hmm.
skateboarder, but one of the most intelligent guys is Rodney Mullen, and he's done a bunch of TED Talks, and he'll talk about how he'll do a trick, and somebody in some country who's not even that good will be able to do it in like 6 weeks, and it took him years to. And he's like, someone's like, he did that because of you, and he's like, he didn't do it. I didn't teach him how to do it. I just showed him that it was possible.
Yeah.
And I think a
That you're
group
the pack secret.
environment. Yeah, so I think a group environment where someone sees like you can be this good, or this is what the bar, what the bar is. So like a lot of kids in Florida, people are like, why is golf good in Florida? Especially in this area, like Miles Russell's from. Jacksonville. I have zero to do with that. Ramon has done a great job with Miles, but uh, like even just having Miles in town, if kids go, if you're a high school golfer, or more specifically, even a freshman high school golfer, that's the bar is the best freshman in Jacksonville is the number one junior in the country, and so and for any class, like he's already the best golfer in the country in ninth grade.
Right.
And so like those kids just go like, even if
Is
they
he
fall
is
short
he
of
related to Ryan or
I
no?
don't
I've never heard.
I don't,
Yeah, maybe not.
I don't know. I know who he is and I think I met him once. Like like super talented kid. And then I think Phil Dunham, like we have a bunch of kids that are
Yeah.
top 100 in the world, but I think it kind of success breeds success. So like even if they fall short, they're still gonna be top
Yeah.
100. Like their definition of what good is skewed. Where like if you live in the Midwest,
Hmm.
it's really easy to be the big fish in the little pond and think you're amazing, and you don't really realize what good really looks like. And I think kids from this area are probably a little more ready for national level competition just because the local competition is hard. And I try to cram as many of those
Yeah, it makes
kids
sense.
onto our property as possible. Like I invite kids that I don't teach. But like so when we're doing up and down stuff, if there's a kid that I know that works with someone else but is a good kid, like is not going to be bad to bring into it. It's like, dude, come over here. Like show this 14-year-old who thinks he's really good what good actually looks like. Like let's humble
I
some
love
eighth graders.
it. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of my friend Chris Trevino that has an academy in Reno, and he
Yeah,
kind of
Chris
deals with
tried
the kids like that. Same, you know,
me and
Chris,
Chris
right?
know
You
each
used
other.
to work with Doc.
Yeah. Yeah, Chris tried
Okay.
I we there was a time where I was considering moving to Reno to help him with all of that. But very similar. Like that's why I think even also playing well
Yeah.
matters. Um, I don't really practice much, but I do just enough to stay good enough to humble most of the kids. And so I always tell them like I wasn't good enough. If me not practicing and not even trying is better than you, then you don't get a chance. Like you definitely have to step this up.
Yeah, I love it. The
And that seems
quieter
to
Chris Trevino is what you, the more.
yeah, like it was. And Chris probably had a better playing career than I did, but he also stuck with it way longer. I
Right.
very quickly realized
Yeah.
that like what my ceiling probably was. Um, realized I very quickly what my ceiling with golf instruction was probably much higher considering he had PGA Tour teaching credentials at like 24. Um, so like it's that was a no-brainer to like this is probably the path you should. I didn't want to be Crash Davis. I didn't want to be 40 years old and have like say I played 2 seasons on the Corn Ferry Tour, missed more cuts than I made, and have a bunch of good stories, but meaningless.
Yeah. I hear you. Nice Bull Durham reference.
Yeah, like
Love it.
that's I saw that
So
movie enough when
continue
I
with
was a kid
Caitlin.
to be
What
like,
do you like? Bring us along. Yeah.
yeah. So for her, we started short game. It was all like what she could hit it pretty far. Um, started wedges and a lot of basic stuff. So like her, and it's something I've learned with a couple good players is golf IQ is not super high. We're working on that. But a lot of players that are super special from
Hmm.
a awareness and athletic perception, like they can do things that they don't even realize that they're doing. And because they're good, no one's explained things that are basic. Um, so things that you would think a player who is already that good would have to know that she absolutely. Something like we want the a wedge swing to be remotely symmetrical, like at least in the ballpark. Um, not
Right.
a quarter of the way back in full follow through, or not a full back swing with no follow through. Um, I thought that was pretty self-explanatory, but apparently some people don't know that.
I understand.
And
Hmm.
then golf swing wise, it's really been for her, both golf swing and gym wise. She works hard in the gym to try and correct kind of weaknesses and flexibility issues. But it's been stabilizing her legs. Like I said, like if you watch her hit an iron, it looks really good,
Mm.
like really good right now. And if
Yeah,
you
I've
watch her hit
watched
her
some of her
driver, it's
videos.
yeah. If you watch her hit a driver, it still looks a little Lexi. Like she'll step out of a few, and but she's also, especially in women's golf,
Yeah,
distance is such an
fair enough.
advantage that hitting a driver 275, 280 isn't enough of an advantage that, and she hits enough fairways that it's not really a death move.
Yeah. So when did you know she was going to be as good as she is now? So what she is she a
They,
sophomore at Alabama?
technically she's a freshman, so she did the or like
Freshman?
she
Okay.
yeah, she graduated high school early. So she did the early enrollment in
Mm, okay.
January. So technically she's a redshirt freshman, but she did one semester, 17 years old. So just get on campus and get
Gotcha.
comfortable and acclimated. Um, but this was her first year of actually playing. But prior to that, she was the number one junior in the world and won the junior PGA and the Rolex and played in the Anwa. So decent resume.
I would say so.
Um, and yeah, like I knew from basically the moment, even before I started teaching her, she was special. Um, just because of
Mm,
she's lucky, the environment that she was in, and she has physical traits. Um, she's taller, stronger than a lot of other girls that made things, I wouldn't say easier because she works her butt off, but helped move things along quicker than most. Um, and then she also there's very few alpha females, and girls that are hyper competitive. There's all super talented girls that like don't even like competition. Like they're doing it to get a scholarship or they're doing it to, and
mm,
from day one, he wanted to like embarrass the boys. Like that was, so to me, like that, she had the attitude. And I think with girls golf, I think that's a massive part of it. With boys, it's inherent.
yeah. Killer
Um,
instinct. Yeah.
yeah, and just wanting to win I wouldn't say at all costs, but at almost all costs. Like winning is almost everything.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I knew was special, like she was always good, but was probably actually that junior PGA win. She was not playing well, and I might have got a panic text like early in the week of that event, like it wasn't going well, and touched
Yeah.
on very simple things that we've done previously. So never going to give anything new the week of a tournament. Um, and forgot what she won by, but it might have been double digits. It was quite a bit. And so she turned a week that wasn't
Wow.
very good starting out and like emotional about it not being good starting out to comfortably winning. Um, that's when I was like, you can win, what made Tiger special is you can win even when it's not your absolute best. You can find a way to kind of make this work.
Right.
And I knew, so when I saw that the mental toughness that took, that was where like Matthew just needs experience. Like that's the tools
Yeah.
are there, and it's constant
Can
refinement with the
you
golf.
can you share any yeah, can you share any of the like the technical stuff that you've done with her golf swing or like what are her tendencies? Kind of interesting to
Yeah,
see as
so
she goes along in her career and obviously probably turned pro.
Yeah, probably. It's more probably more of a question of when rather than if. Um,
Yeah,
but
exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
yeah, her old golf swing was very kind of hands little Nancy Lopez, like hands out, club it, like very typical of what you see
Yeah,
with,
it's totally different now, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So her pattern actually is an exaggerated version of mine. Um, but I love it because it's very old school. So now we've gone to correct the problem, we went the opposite direction. So hands are pretty deep, pretty early, clubs more vertical. Um,
Right.
and then arms work out. So it's kind of in and over, but club lays down a ton. Um, and it ends up being the path is very neutral, pretty neutral when she's doing it well.
Hmm.
Um,
So what's her stock
driver
shot?
likes to fade it with driver and probably draw short irons. So be playing stuff, but
Hmm.
fairly. So our goal is to get swing direction pretty much zero, like pretty neutral.
Gotcha.
Driver because of her intent uh, and speed, like she definitely hits way like six up on it. So pass left considerably
Hmm.
with driver.
Irons are more like 2 to 4 club path to the right ish
Yeah, yeah, and she hits it
with a zero swing
nearly as
direction.
far as
Yeah.
I do.
How's that feel?
I'm like I. The funny thing is like I
I've
think
had a
part of
few
the
kids.
why
I'm getting there.
I think the funny thing is like I don't have the Napoleon syndrome, like because like I've always been short. I'm actually the longest I probably have been since I maybe the second year playing professional golf, but like I'm almost as long now as I was
Oh
then,
wow.
and like I'm still not long. Like I don't like I think I like if I rip at one, I think I posted the other day, it's like 115. Um, but I tell people like I'm 5'7", maybe 5'7.5" on a good day, and like out of shape and don't practice. So like it- it's more that I do just fine with what I got.
Yeah. Did she do any speed training at all, or is it just was she naturally just progressively got faster as she got stronger?
We've done some speed work. Um, the problem with well, kids in general, um, and anybody actually is like speed training if done wrong is high risk. Um, I think most people don't tend to rest long enough between sessions, and I think you end up with injuries. So to me, it's balancing
Yeah.
that stuff in the gym. She had a trainer since she was probably, will probably correct me, but 14-ish, 15-ish. And so, and it's constantly like she's gotten more and more dedicated to that over time. And it's kind of like the same thing to me with her lower body is the more stable it gets, it'll make her better, but we're trying to move it 1% better every single day. Like it's not, it doesn't have to be perfect tomorrow.
And better would be what? Is it more like what's the pivot like in your opinion for
So
her? What does it look like?
she can get in the positions I can only, like her rotator cuff flexibility is off the charts. So like she can get the club even if she's way open, lower body wise. She's almost too much separation to where she can't catch up, and then almost too much external rotation in the trail shoulder to where. And so that's the stepping out of it is her way to get the path left, like to hit the shot that she wants to hit. Is that if it's trailing so much, it's her way to kick it around. Like it's an additional force to kind of get everything working around. Which is why, like,
Gotcha.
it's fixing
Yeah.
the other stuff before we fix. Like that's the thing that's saving her. So I'm not gonna purposely do that until the club's in a position to where she doesn't have to do it.
Which is what are the backswing pieces you mentioned like hands in a little more depth early, club a
Yeah,
little
with the
more
club.
upright and
Yeah.
online at the top from what I've seen in her videos.
Yeah, less arm. So for her, it's feeling like hands get deep with minimal arm rotation. So she's kind of the most of the
Yeah.
depth comes by like hip high. So if we're using max stuff like
Hmm.
P2.5, and then the right arm just folds vertically.
Right.
So like there's almost no depth gain from hip high to the top of the backswing.
Right. Then there's a little bit more arm lift from there to get it to the top.
Yeah, it's very Sneed-esque. Um,
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Gotcha.
and like that's somewhat purposeful, but more so like it's applying to her. Like it's what he'd always kind of had that out move, the shifted out move, and thought it was bad. And I'm like,
Hmm.
if we get the club center mass following enough behind, it doesn't matter. Like you're going to kick it around, like it's going to be fine. And I think it's a dangerous golf swing that a lot of
Hmm.
people probably don't understand that move. So the argument on social media with the one kid that posted the other day is it's the same thing. They're like, that's over the top. It's like, dude, this path is 6+ now. Like it's not over the top of, but people don't understand the depth early and when the arms work out, the shaft can flatten. It's like Carl Pedersen hitting draws. Like people can't wrap their head around a guy who's has that much out in transition. It's push
Yeah.
draws.
It's like my guy Will McGirt.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
the
if you've seen
same.
his swing. It's
It's a,
the same. It's very
yeah,
similar
it's a
to
cleaner
Pedersen.
version of that. But yeah,
And yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. As long as they can control the sweet spot, that's probably your only challenge. Is like when the hands get that far away from the body, and clearly she can do that.
Yeah. Like it went from, I always tell people the evolution of her golf swing became that's a good golf swing for Caitlin to that's a really good golf swing for a girl. And now there's, like, if you get face on or down the line with an iron, there's no qualifier. It's just that's a good golf swing. And long term, I want the driver to match that, but it's not that like it's just a constant gradual. The whole for her, thankfully, with her dad and the input, like it's always been about the long game. It's always been about how good is she going to be at 20, 25, 30. Like it's been about
Right.
long-term player development instead of like trying to play for the tournament next week.
That's so important. Like how important. Clearly, you've pointed that out, but like the parents and like their mentality of and then trust in you in that mentality of the long term plan has got to be crucial, right?
Yeah, it's tough. Like
Because
I
you know
had,
we've seen the opposite, and we all have those. Like, why is she not playing better next week? You know, like okay, let's
yeah,
cool it
and
and let's look
a
ahead
lot
a
of
little
times
bit.
it's
Here's where
actually,
I'm going, and here's where she's going to be.
yeah, I would say nowadays it's actually, I'm getting less parents. There's definitely the helicopter parents, but I would say it's equally as much on the kids. TikTok generation, these kids, and also if they see the scores, they see what everybody
Yeah,
in this area, even just their friends are super good. And it's kind of like, I want to be there tomorrow. And it's like not under, and kids,
right.
especially the like middle schoolers, they don't understand that I have like Sam Ha, who's one of the people I've seen on my Instagram. Like he's now a freshman in high school. He's 14. But he's been like elite level fast since he was 10, like from pretty early on. So at his stock swing at 14 years old is 117. And he can move it over 120 if he wants to.
Whoa.
And he's like 5'7", 5'8". He's not one of those kids that's like 6'2" at 14. He just moves extremely well and efficiently. And we have another kid
So,
who's like no, seventh grader who's like barely 5 foot and, is mad that everybody hits it further than him. And it's like, dude, your dad is like jacked and 6'2". Like, it's probably going to be okay long term. Like, we just have to let this play out.
yeah, Yeah, it's tough to
And
have
the
that conversation with a kid. You're right. It's like the kids are probably more impatient than the parents nowadays.
yeah, the dad's completely on board, and it's actually getting the kid to be more patient because he's really good. Like he just finished, I think it was third or fourth in the junior Honda, like hitting it way shorter than everybody else. So like I tell him like the big thing with him is skill
Yeah.
development. Like get to where you have all these skills to where the only thing you're lacking is distance. And then when the distance kicks in, you're good, which is what happened with Miles Russell. Miles Russell, even though I've only kind of seen from afar, people, what makes that kid good? Does he hit it far? Like whatever? No, he's undersized, is pretty small. That's it. Like I bet he swings 108. Like he's not world class fast yet. He probably will be, but he's been like he would be
Hmm.
top five in strokes gained on and around the greens since he was like 10. Like his short game is world
Yeah.
class at a young age, which is rare, and he hits it pretty straight. And all the only ingredient that was missing was he didn't really quite hit it far enough to be elite. He was good, not like elite. So he was really good for his age, but like competing at AJGAs and stuff wasn't really on the table for a while. And then like the moment he could hit it like 275, it was he went on a run last year where I think he won like four and five, four out of the five AJGAs he played in like a 3 month period,
Jeez.
and then won the junior
Oh, is
players
this the
and who
kid
knows
that?
what else.
Oh, this is the kid that shot 60 at South Beach. Lefty?
Yes,
No,
yes, yeah.
there was a kid that. Oh shit! Yeah, I saw him. My
He just
son. We
yeah,
actually
and he's
played
like a little
pickleball
like
when
yeah,
I was
he
down there with
looks
my son.
super
Now I hear
young.
you're talking. Oh, he's tiny.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and he shot
Wow,
60 at the South Beach, and he's 14 years old. Like, that's so
dude,
like that's the kid that our
unbelievable. I
seventh
like.
grader
He
is
was
going
playing
like,
so hard that day. It wasn't.
yeah, that's, our kids are like, I suck. I'm like, well, the frame of reference is a little bit skewed.
Oh my god. Yeah, no kidding. That kid's ridiculous. Yeah, I didn't realize who you were talking about. Now I totally
Yeah, he's
get it. Yeah, I was just like, who is this kid? And one of the parents told me, he's like, yeah, that kid won like 4 or 5 AJGA like invitationals. Like it was like not even close. I'm like, okay. Then we come in and like it wasn't super tough, but it was pretty windy that day. And I was like, I saw 65, but I did not see 60. Like it was,
yeah, he's
he had a 20 footer for 59. I was like,
and he,
holy shit.
and like I said, is like his all the other skills are there. So like as long as he's hitting it on the planet, like he's gonna score. Like his ability, like I would actually argue bad weather probably swings things in his favor because if he does miss greens, he's not sweating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
similar, like I have
Interesting.
had other people like Caitlin, and I think there's a very different process. So you have some people that they take to the game of golf really quickly, and I think they slack on the technical side because they can get you will let yourself get away with what you can get away with. So because they're so good without having to actually swing it that good, that a lot of people let them get away with that. And they eventually it's always going to catch up to you. Um, and you have to really harp on the technical side. And then I think you have the opposite. The kids that like Sam's a good example. Amazing golf swing, hits it great. Scoring leaves a lot to be desired for someone who hits it as good as he. He's still like whatever top 100 in his class, but he's should be
Yeah.
more where Miles is, not where he currently is. But it's maturity in like playing golf and like I just think everybody develops different skill sets at a different rate, and it's kind of helping kids and parents understand that be good at what you're capable of being good at now, and kind of trying to make the weaknesses better. But those we have a long runway with the thing you're not good at, and let's own
Yeah.
crap out of the thing that you are really good at.
So how do you like if you had to describe like your framework to train your really good juniors, like what would that look like?
On the mechanical side, it's very individual, one on one. So like to me, I'm biased because the type of player is I was kind of doing decade stuff before decade exists. Like I was definitely the relatively conservative, hit a ton of fairways, hit a ton of greens. And kind of my attitude was like Colin Keller could shoot 70 from where you hit it. So like, and I wasn't a great putter. So figuring out how to score even when I couldn't putt was kind of my key to surviving. And um, for the most part, I think most kids aren't very good putters because they don't find it fun. Like, as soon as they learn that that's an important part of the game and they prioritize it, they can get good at it pretty quickly. But like if they're not interested, they're not interested. There's nothing you can say to make them a good putter, and if they don't care about it. And so to me, it's like Sam. It's like he doesn't really care about being a good putter. He wants to hit it like Jesus. And so I go, let's try to get as close to that as possible. And to where, so like what he's done is Sam this year as a freshman was worried about making the high school team. Their high school team should have good. Um, could have clearly won states, but didn't. Um, but like he had the third lowest scoring average, I think, in uh high school golf as a freshman, like under par. And the funny thing is, because he was playing with his friends, he played really well in like AJGAs and FJTs. His scoring average is not under par, but it's like it's so learned. I mean, it's kind of what I've
Mm,
always known, but it's kind of like putting people and kids in situations that give them the highest probability of success. It's like with most of my kids, I try to help set their schedule. It's like we're gonna play golf courses that fit your game. So if you're really long, maybe a little bit crooked, we're gonna search out the resort golf course that's might be 7,200 yards where half the field doesn't hit it far enough at your age, but there's a lot of room. Big greens, big fairways. Or if you're a kid who, hits it down hallways, let's not play that golf. Let's play the tough tree line golf course that everybody else hates, but doesn't bother you. And I think I try to mix. I have a rule where I think it's like a thirds rule. So I think a third of the tournaments you should play should be pretty easy. Like if you play, you're the best player in the field. Like if you're in those events, you're probably going to win. Like you'd have to play bad, to not win. And I think a third of the tournaments you play, you should be able to win. But there's no guarantees. Like there's probably 10 to 20 kids at similar level. And then I think you should play a 30-year events where you're in over your head and like making match play or making the cut is a win. Like you're just trying to finish in the top 50 percentile.
gotcha.
And I think it's kind of like red light, green light, yellow. It's like playing worst ball or best ball. It's like you learn how to win what you should win, but you also learn how to kind of tread water and survive when you're in over your head. And I think too many parents probably do too much of the in over your head. Like they want to play too many AJGAs and too many events
Mm, they want the best ones.
too soon, and they
Yeah,
care about ranking and they care about all that stuff. And instead of like understanding that winning is a skill and being comfortable with the lead and being comfortable out in front and having to go to sleep with all the pressure of leading a golf tournament by three is very different than leading or, you know, shooting a final round 68 to backdoor top 10. Like that's, you had no pressure. Like that, not that it doesn't take skill, but that's way easier to do than sleeping on the lead and then coming out and shooting in the 60s the next day. And I think even if
sure.
I actually like this will probably catch me flack, but it's mainly golf instructors, not parents, but probably still something. I actually like the changes JGS has done, even though most people complain. Um, it's making strength of tournament, other than the adjustment, which can get a little funny in AJGAs. Um, but it's making it more just straight. Like if you have a low scoring differential, it doesn't matter what events you're playing. You're going to get no, like your ranking is going to be well. So it used to be if you shot a low round in like a local, like our North Florida Junior, like run by the local PGA, like you played in our local tournament and you, even if you shot 66, 66, a couple years ago, your ranking would get worse if you were a really good player. Nowadays, they've kind of fixed it as long as they're playing a reasonably hard golf course. Is that it's more just straight course rate. Like if you shot under the course rating by a considerable amount, you're good. And I try to argue with parents is the adjustment to AJGAs kind of a rich get richer thing. They're always adjusted up. But I would also say they're always anybody who's played an invitational or a high level AJGA will tell you that golf course is not playing as easy as it's rated. Like the day it was rated is not set up the same as it is in AJGA. It's harder. And there's a reason why when kids play an invitational, the scores are higher than when they play the state golf association stuff. And there has to be a way to reflect that. And I think if you use JGS correctly, you can be one of the top players without playing AJGAs, especially in Florida where we have talent, is it's helped me get
Yeah.
parents to allow their kids to play more of the local stuff or more of the regional stuff where it was like as soon as they got to be decent, it was like we're only playing AJGAs and we're not playing and then we're also only going to play 5 events a year. We try to like stack the deck to where it's only the biggest events to where they're trying to game the system to get the ranking as high as humanly possible. And that backfires really bad if one of those 5 events is not good.
Yeah, they don't take into account weather a lot of times too. Like we just had the junior heritage this past weekend and it was blowing 40 and raining, and I mean, the kid that won shot +1 and won by 7. Like, and two of my kids,
From
I
Jacksonville.
had one kid shot 77, 78. Yeah, it's yeah, exactly. Oh, is that he was from Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Like
Um,
the kid that won?
yeah, Phil Dunham won.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what his name was, but yeah,
But
so
like
I'm just saying,
that's
like it was, you look at the scores, like, oh yeah, that's no problem. Like, it was playing really hard.
yeah, and that happens here. Like there's the golf course here, anybody that's in Florida has played it. There's a course here called Palatka Golf Club, which is like a 1920s down Ross. It has never been redone. So original grass, original greens, but now the slopes are even more severe because they've top dressed them. And
Mm.
they are, even though they've never redone them, they're faster than they were when they play tournaments there. They're faster than, and it's just like 5,900 yard golf course that's rated at like 68. People think they're going to go in there and just tear it to shreds. And almost any junior event that's there, 1 under is a good score.
Wow. Yeah,
And
just
but,
breaks the system.
yeah, because they just think, oh, short golf courses, I'm going to score. And it's like they have a green out there that's 14 by 12. And it
Oh
has a
my
dead
gosh.
hippopotamus in the middle of it.
Ugh.
Like you're good luck.
That's crazy.
And like, but like I think
So
playing
so
some of
what are
those
like
events
some of the
matters.
things you do? Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. Um but yeah, there's some like that, like Camden Country Club in South Carolina is kind of like that too. It's like the hardest 6,500-yard course you ever see, and it's like Donald Ross, same deal. It's never super low. So how do you put pressure on your kids? Like, what are some of the games that you play, whether it's on course or how do you simulate pressure?
A lot of it is the beauty of kind of our program, and I get a lot of one-on-one time, and then when we play, we kind of group kids together. So I usually use themselves or each other to because there's everybody had the kid that like you can't stand losing to. And if you can't stand losing to a kid, he's going to
Mm.
be in your cart. You're going to be paired with him, and you're going to have to play against him today. And like if you let me know someone bothers you, like you're definitely that's going to be your playing partner for the next 6 months. And then they're all good. Like I would say of the kids that are regularly around, like other than maybe one or two, like almost all of them regularly shoot under par. So like they the bar just gets raised. Like if a kid shows up, everybody else is shooting under par. So their mindset, even if they're a beginner, isn't, and I don't lower the bar for anyone. So when we do a short game competition, like the kid that's only been playing 6 months is going against the kid that's on a full ride to a top 50 D1 school because it's the occasionally they'll win. Like if they beat the kid that day, that kid's never been happier in his life. And it motivates the
Right.
D1 kid to never let that happen again. And so it work and those
Hmm.
kids, no matter what, everybody has weaknesses. So like I usually actually try to pair it so that maybe a kid that is not as good of a golfer, we're doing a skill contest against someone who's a much better golfer than them. But they're actually better in that scenario than a better player is. And it's to motivate both of them. To show the kid that's not as good, hey, like you have stuff that you're good at, and you just haven't figured out all of the pieces of this puzzle, but like there's pieces of the puzzle on the table. Like you've got part of it figured out and that this is attainable. And then usually I like humbling the kids that think they're really good. And so like if you have a kid that's been playing 6 months and is a 10 handicap and they're a +6 and they lose to them, it's ego boost, ego breaking. And like I think having an ego is
Yeah.
probably the most
Right.
dangerous thing for junior golfers. So we try to keep, and most of the kids now, because of the scenario, pretty humble. What generally happens is when they go away to college and then they come back, they want to come practice with the high schoolers in the middle. Like they want to give back and like so like if they're chipping the contest, they want to be involved
Be a
and
mentor.
yeah, are helping because they saw what that kind of feeds. Same thing with tour players. Like if there's a tour player around,
That's
they'll
cool.
come help them. It's going to create an environment of yes, I'm going to kick your butt to humble you, but then I'm also going to like it's like how do you play that shot and what did you do here? And my goal is to kind of create groups that are going to frustrate each other for various reasons. But basically, I want there to be whether it's just personalities clash and they don't like each other, or it's a they're really good friends but they want to beat each other. Uh, to me, I want there to
Hmm.
be a rivalry
Yeah,
at kind of all
I like that a
times.
lot.
And like, so like if there's a like my favorite one is that has happened from a his kid who asked to, I told him I was gonna be on a podcast and he's like, "Are you gonna talk about me?" And I told him probably not, but I'm going to. Is kid I teach named Nolan Harper.
Yeah.
Um,
Give him a shout out.
and so when he was he's been a good player for a long time, but very kind of quiet and timid when he was first kind of going to the academy. He was probably like eighth gradish. Like yeah, he was. Yeah, he was pre high school. And like he'd take lessons, but when he started actually hanging around the older kids, he was very quiet. And our kids will bust balls. Like they're not gonna hold back. And like I think he's like jaw hit the floor his first week, and within a month he might have become the best shit talker out of all of them. Like he went from being the kid who
I
was like
love it.
very beta and timid to a kid who was like walk with some swagger and like because the difference is most of the kids that were running their mouth weren't as good as this little seventh or eighth grader. And so he got confidence because he's like, you can talk all the shit you want, but I'm better than you. And like he would do it like subtly. So like he would hit a chip to like a foot and just turn and stare at them and do like a long stare, like like you know that I know that I just whooped your ass. And like it went from this kid who was
I
really
love it.
quiet and timid to a kid who was almost like a huge smartass, like instantaneously. And the golf improved massively along the way. Like he's still a kid who struggles
Sure.
with confidence at times, and I don't think he'll have a problem with me saying that because the last 2 years he's had an opportunity to win a ton of big events, and I would say hasn't closed the deal, and he knows it. So I'm not bringing up
What class
anything.
is he?
24, so he's a senior. Um, but like
Okay.
he
So
was an
where is he
alternate,
committed?
yeah, FGCU. He had a couple offers from decent D1
Okay.
programs. Played in the last couple US juniors, like missed both on the number for match play. Um, with like dumb,
Mm.
like making a nine on an easy par five to miss by one. Just like, and but like he was an alternate for the Junior Jones Cup and then slept on the lead going into the final round. So like he ended up finishing I think third or fourth. And I told him like if you started the week, I know you're disappointed that you didn't win, but it's like you were an alternate. So the kid who wasn't supposed to be there last minute got in, ended up almost winning. I think he had a chance to win with a couple holes left to play.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And like yeah, it's got him into like he's in the simplify and then the Western like I mean he's gonna have a fun summer before he starts college golf. But like he's still
That's great.
fighting through. But I think if he didn't have that experience of like I at least can gain some confidence, I don't think he gets the lead in the first round. Like I don't think he can go like show up to an event where he's the worst ranked player probably in the field and end the first day going like I can win this. Now, 4 holes to play. I don't know what was going through his head or how his head, but like, he at least ended going into the final round. He thought he could win it.
That's progress. That's a mindset.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have
I mean, that's awesome.
yeah. The other good example that I can name Andrew Riley. Same thing came to me really early on, like within under a year of picking up a golf club. Was okay, like a freshman who shot like 41, but like at the time was small, undersized, and was good at scoring. Like didn't hit a lot of greens, didn't hit it super far. And the funny thing now he's like whatever 6'3", 2, um, but not small anymore. But he's a kid kind of the same way, gradually built up the confidence, had a chance to win a lot, and kind of like Nolan didn't really seal the deal. And so we had a conversation middle of last college season. So he was a kid who had a bunch of D1 offers, had bad grades, had to go to a D2 school for academic reasons. And his first year and a half in D2, he had one of the best scoring averages in the country, but had never won. Like, I think he'd finished top 25 every event he played, most events in the top 10, but no wins. A lot of leads, but
Mm.
like didn't win. Um, and he'll hate this story. On his birthday, he played in one of the biggest events with like all the best D2 teams in the country and had like a 4-shot lead with 5 holes to play and finished third. Uh, we had to talk like
Oof.
you would have the lead after the first round, then you can have it after the second round. You keep getting better and better, and it falls apart later and later. And like you can't keep knocking on the door this many times and have it not go through. And he the 2 events later happened to be NCAA regionals, which he came from like I think 3 or 4 shots behind to win by 4, and then he ended up winning NCAA regionals NCAA nationals by some margin. So won regionals and national champion. Uh, but same thing with
Wow.
the arc of like
Yeah. There you go.
I don't know if I can win to like I keep they would say choking, but like can't close the deal. To then all of a sudden, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Like this is a very doable thing, and that's the
What was
op.
his feedback on that during that conversation? Like when you were talking to him after he blew that lead, like what was like? Was he super emotional, or how was he? Well, how was his attitude?
Yes and no, because like I'm pretty involved in my kids' like I'm a person whose cell phone like it's gone off like 100 times since I've been sitting here. Like I'm pretty much involved in like I welcome the text messages kind of at all hours, even though the wife doesn't always love that. But um,
Yeah,
so like
same.
it wasn't the first talk we've had like that. So like it's kind of like it's the same thing with when no one lost the Jones Cup. It's like you can be both sad and happy at the same time. You go like at the beginning of the league, if I told you you finished top five, you'd probably take that. Now, when you have a big lead, you don't want to hear that. Like you don't want to hear that like it's the hindsight of going like you're allowed to have both emotions instead of like you it is okay that you're mad
Hmm.
that you're lost. Like if you weren't mad that you lost, there's a problem. Like I did a panel
Right.
with
You don't care enough.
yeah, I did a panel with I think Cheryl and Dunnigan. I think I won't say ruffled feathers, but I think where people were surprised by the answer, and they're like, "What do you think's the most important trait in a good player?" And I said, "I've never met a good player that's a good loser." Um, I go like, I don't want kids to like losing. Like I want it to hurt, and so that's why part of the thing in the actual program I make them lose because it hurt. Like it's the biggest. Like I've never seen a kid after a loss if I'm there to, kind of shape the narrative that doesn't work 10 times harder for the next month after that. And they want the redemption.
I like that. Yeah,
And so, like, to
learn a lot about
me,
him.
yeah, to me, it's one of those things to where, like, he viewed it as, like, I know I'm good. Like, obviously, I keep getting these opportunities. So, like, it's not that I suck. It's that, and a lot of it's like, essentially bad breaks. And I go like, is you recognizing that you got good breaks to be in the lead. Like they're going to balance out. And the problem is yours happened to come at the time that you absolutely didn't want to. Like one, he missed the green by like 5 yards, hit a cart path when OB and ends up costing him a couple. It's like, it really wasn't a bad shot. Like you didn't really miss it by a ton. I think another tournament he hit it just over the back of the green and they couldn't find the ball. Like landed on the green, like,
Wow.
and like there's whatever palmetto bushes and whatever. But it's like if you can't actually find it and identify it, like you have to go replay it. And it's one of those things to where like you've also hit a tree and ended up in the middle of the fairway. So like
Right.
and so I try to be. I think my job is
Then he wins, right? Then that's
yeah. Then last summer he played good. Like he played pretty good at the
and he's
South
like,
Beach. I
yeah,
can't remember what he finished, but I think it was like 10th or somewhere around there. You
yeah, it's
know,
good.
yeah, played okay Southern, Western. Like, I mean, he had a pretty good season after winning that. And like, but now that's part of the reason why he had a bunch of offers because he transferred when he entered the portal, and he chose, I would argue, the lesser offer from either a prestige or a money standpoint with the whole NIL deal. Um,
Hmm.
Like he turned down multiple SEC schools to go to UNF. Part of that's I'm there, and he likes Schroeder. Like there's a relationship there. But Nick
Yeah,
Gabrelchek was really the answer.
yeah,
And I don't even know if Nick knows it, but like the answer of being having a chance to be around the kid who's probably the second best player in college golf, or third best player in college golf, and then Robbie Higgins, who just won JU's event by like the two All-Americans on that team to go there and one not have to be the guy because he was the best player in school history at the previous school he was at is and kind of start that process over again. So having to be third best and fight, and he realized that
yeah,
every time he's backs against the wall, he ends up getting better. So he kind of put himself in the most difficult situation where he was guaranteed playing time because there was options where he could play where like there's no guarantees even that like Auburn was an option that
yeah. It's that's a probably a good call, man. I've gone
And
through that with my son. He did the
yeah,
same thing.
I like that I get that like I'm a part of that decision making process because like I went to a school where I chose the better school. Part of it was academics, but like I didn't really play college golf because I chose the school that there was no way I was going to be in the starting five. But it was because it was the coolest school. Like it was, I think they had the top recruiting class in the country that year. Like I think that was, you
Yeah,
don't want to be the worst player as a part of that.
yeah. That's the hard decision when we're trying to help our kids. Make that call. Like you don't want them to go to the best. While we're talking to one of my kids today about one of his friends went to UNC, and like kids probably doesn't have a chance to play. Like they're so good.
Yeah,
You
and
don't want to be that last guy on your national championship team.
yeah, and like I use the Alabama reference a lot is that like kids are 5 stars go to Alabama and they're third on the depth chart, and they could have gone to Kentucky and been All-American and actually have a higher probability of getting drafted. But people like golf, you don't get better on the bench,
Yeah,
and I think it can also ruin a kid's confidence very quickly. Um, I think generally going to a school where you're going to play as a freshman, but you're not going to be the top guy. Like you're almost a lock for the top five, but not the top spot is the ideal situation. The goal is to get to be the number one, but
yeah. That's a good point.
you're not given it. And I think that was
Mm.
his decision in the recruiting process. Like there was two SEC schools that were basically telling him like, "You're coming here to be the guy." And he's like, "I want to be pushed. Like I don't, but I also don't want to be the seventh man. Like I want to, like he was like, I want to find."
Right.
So I would argue he chose the second hardest situation, the one where he knew he was probably going to play, but
Yeah, that's all right.
yeah, and he missed one event so far at UNF, um, and I think that was more being used as a teaching tool
So
than
this would
it
be
was.
what is this junior year? Is that what you
Yeah,
said? Like he
yeah,
played 2 years at D2 and then yeah, so he's got 2 more years.
yeah, and that was the only reason he transferred was because of
Be
PGA
cool to
Tour
watch
U.
him. Right.
Like
Have a chance to get
it's
in there and
yeah, it's such an
get a
incentive
card
nowadays. And two guys on his team that are
for sure.
near the top of PGA Tour U. So he kind of knew that both those guys are graduating. So like it's 1 year as the number three guy, and then when they leave, he's kind of expected to be the guy next year.
Gotcha. You can stay eligible, right?
His
Keep the
grades
grades
have
up.
gotten better. He's figured out that like that's the problem is like he's not
Tutors help.
yeah. And some people he's not Einstein, but he's not the world's dumbest kid either. Like there's an effort element to that as well. Um, And like
Yeah,
he's figured out that you have to do more than the bare minimum effort wise to you have to at least try a little bit that part.
for sure.
That's where I think I try to push the
Awesome,
kids
man.
like
This is great.
I try to push my kids to where like I know what all of their grades are. And if their grades aren't where they're supposed to be, like I'll tell them they can't book a lesson. Or they know they're gonna get shit for it 24/7.
So, are you communicating with their college coaches? Like, how frequent are you
Um, it
getting
depends. Like
into some of those?
I
Because I
mean,
know
like
it goes both ways with mine.
yeah, like at UNF, like I have a bunch of kids that play there, and like I teach his daughter. So like there's kind of a fairly steady stream of
Yeah, that's
communication.
easy.
Um, I would say a lot of the coaches I'm in contact with. But a lot if I have a say in the decision, I generally point them to coaches that I know, like that I would trust sending my own kid to. So I have a pretty good relationship with a handful of coaches across the country that tend to Works both ways. I've sent players to them and they'll send players to me.
Yeah.
Um, but that I trust fully. Like I know they're gonna do right by the kid. Like that's what I care about is I know that
Yeah.
they're not gonna meddle with their golf swing and they're if the kid deserves to play, he's gonna play. And it's merit based and like we're gonna push them in the right way. And I think personality matters a lot too. Like there's some kids whose parents are very kind of pushy and tough. Um, and I can send those kids almost anywhere because college is going to be lighter than home was. Um, there's other kids that like if someone pushes them, they will shut down and like they can't play for a certain type of coach. Try to get around that. Like I try to not have kids that need kids gloves. But at a certain point, someone is who they are, and like I still think they have to go to some place where they can
Right.
succeed. And I think this is probably like I think business wise, this is every bit as much about reading people and personalities than it is about like the being the smartest guy in the room is rarely as impactful as people think it is, as far as like who's the best teacher. Like the in a golf lesson, you're maybe giving someone 0.5% of what you know. So at the end of the day, it's the how well you can communicate and relate to the person standing in front of you matters more. That's why a lot of teachers that guys think don't know a lot and aren't super technical are hyper successful. And some of the guys that think they're brilliant haven't had quite the same success is because there's more to it than X's and O's.
Definitely. That's exactly right.
And
So
that's kind of,
how would you push like a young coach nowadays if somebody you probably sure are getting still still young, but you got to be getting some questions from coaches that want to get better. Is like what path do you put them on? What are the things that you would suggest they do?
for me, I would shadow as much as possible. Like I don't know a single coach, and I'm sure there's some that would turn somebody down if someone was eager to learn and was going there for the right reasons, saying like, "Hey man, like I'd love to come watch you teach for a day or two." And I'm always shocked at how little I'm asked. Like, I mean, it's happens. I would say it's a handful of times a year. I don't know how much you're asked, but like it's only a handful of times a
A
year,
ton. Yeah.
and that's
Hmm.
shocks me.
Yeah, I would
Like
expect to be more.
the assistant pros of a club that teach never watch me teach.
That's not uncommon. That's what happens
No,
at
but
clubs. It's
like
like the ones that are
it's
closest to you, like just take for granted.
yeah, you can never be an expert in your own town. Like that's the and I think my personality probably doesn't help that from the sense that like one, I don't suffer fools, and two, I don't really care about the self promotion. Like I'm dropped my PGA a long time ago, so like I'm not gonna win any awards. I don't really care about any of that, and so like I would guess at least half the PGA members in my chapter, so not even the section, like locally, don't know who I am.
Really?
But
Wow.
my attitude is like my job, like they're not clients. Like I'm not selling lessons to them, so I don't give a shit. Like they're not going to
Right.
like if my lessons book like it's the same thing with like the golf magazine or golf digest stuff or all that other stuff. People are like, oh, those awards mean a lot. But like one, nobody reads magazines anymore, and two, if your book is full, it's full. Like it doesn't you can't fit anymore. And if you're on social media all day, I'm gonna question how much time you can actually devote to teaching. Like the people that are campaigning for all those awards, as a
Yeah.
general, I'm going to guess, aren't actually giving a lot of golf lessons.
Yep. That's fair.
And I was always brought up to be
for
like,
sure.
if you have to tell someone how awesome you are, then you probably aren't that awesome.
I love it,
But like that's
dude.
why,
This has been so much fun. I appreciate your time.
absolutely. And that's where like I think you are a little different. Like
Yeah,
you have the job like there's a reason I'm not teaching at Sea Island. But I also like I wear anybody that knows me, I wear flip flops half the time and like I don't look like Sea Island. Like I have full sleeve. Like that's not I would say I don't look like a golf pro. Like no one would pick me out of a lineup as a golf pro. And I'm kind of completely okay with that. And I actually
right.
think the kids like I think I can relate a lot to the kids more so because I don't look like the stuffy uppity golf.
Right. Yeah, you got the flat bill and the look like a skater kid still, even at your age, which I think is awesome. That's why I love you so much.
Yeah, and I think like George Gankus relate like a lot of the kids relate well to him because he looks like a kid. And I don't mean that as any disrespect. Like
Right.
he can relate
No, no, I get it.
to teenagers. And so like if you look at the bulk of his business, that's kind of what it is. And I think juniors are the most fun to work with because they actually like are malleable. They listen as a general rule, not 100%, but they're not a sieve.
Yeah,
They're a fence with some leaks, but they're some of it sticks.
yeah.
And they have the time to improve. So like they actually practice. It's like even most adults that want to get better, like they don't have the time to improve. And I think teaching tour players is the
Hmm.
massively overrated thing because a lot of guys that do that primarily for their primary business, like they didn't develop them. They got them when they were already tour players. And so you're just kind of trying not to screw it up and make it marginally better. Um, but that's nowhere near as fun to me as like kind of frame up restoration where you're building it from the ground up.
I agree. You're about to get that with your girl, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So a couple more years,
Well, and that's where I would say most of the,
dude. It's so good to catch up with you.
yeah.
It's a delay. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that yeah, there's,
No, keep going. Keep going. I'm sorry.
uh, I was gonna say like the most of the tour players that I work with now, I've taught before they were tour, like, and they're the most loyal and they're the most, and like, I've had plenty, like, I think I've had like 9 guys go from Corn Ferry to PGA Tour that all eventually left at a certain point, and I know where I'm at. Like I have
Yeah.
like if a PGA Tour player calls me, I know that I am the last stop on the train. Like I know they've exhausted every other resource other than me. So if I get a PGA Tour player, I'm not getting them at their peak of their heights. I'm usually getting them pretty close to rock bottom, which can be fun. Like I've had guys go from losing their tour card to a lot of success, or guys that were like Julian, for instance, was I think 1500 in the world, the top 60 in the world. But
Julian Surrey.
yeah, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like those still are tour players are cool, high stress, highly emotional, and there's good reason. There's a lot of money on the line, but they're not the best students. And I guess if you're not searching for fame and fortune, I think it's still hard to get with them because some of them don't like to pay very much. But I think it's a very overrated thing that I think everybody when they start to teach wants to teach tour players, and then a lot of people when they get there realize very quickly
Yep.
that it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Amen. You're the man.
I don't know about that,
Tell
but
everybody how they can kind of get a hold of you and follow you on socials and give out your
yeah,
website. You're still selling your short game series, right?
yeah, um, yeah. I think that's available.
A
on the
little bit.
website and through Skillist. Um, I do online lessons on Skillist, and I think all social medias can Carraher or some variation of that. Um, there's going to be, if you search it, there's going to be a knife and putter one as well, and that's also me. So feel free to follow those as well. Even though it's probably outside of most people's niche interest. Well, the putters probably are within the interest,
Yeah, for sure.
but yeah,
Do you have a minute to talk? I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but talk about your putter design and how you kind of got into that.
yeah. So when I went to college, the plan was to be Buddy Marucci. Um, so the plan was actually like I didn't think I was gonna ever be good enough to really play professional golf, but I saw Buddy when I was in high school, maybe it was high school, play Tiger, and it was like that guy still competing at a high level as an amateur. Like it'd be cool to do. And then my other love was cars and really taking anything apart and putting it back together. And so it was going to be, I was going for a master's in high performance engine design and then was going to do golf as like hobby. And then I turned pro at 20, left school at 21 thinking I could play professional golf and went the other way. So I went to golf became the job and then tinkering kind of became the hobby. But I learned CAD and all that stuff in college and actually helped Scratch Golf, which is now National Custom Golf, with their putter line, ill-fated putter line, but lasted for a short period of time. And that's when I got into like the looking at design and kind of carrying. I've always been really picky with equipment, and then figured that someone who's anal when it comes to equipment would probably be pretty good at designing it. And someone who slightly understands the physics involved. And so um, bought a CNC, who knows how many years ago, and started just playing with making things. Um, and for a while, did way more knives than putters. And have now tried to balance those two. The knives definitely make more money, but the putters, golf, and I like making pretty much anything.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, I saw look at one of your the ones you posted on Instagram. It looks pretty sick.
Yeah, the like I like to
Your putter that you posted.
yeah, I like to do both. I would say relatively simple but cool looking things, and then there's some putters that I know would not sell well, but I like to push the boundaries of what is possible. Like I have a couple putters that I've done that look relatively traditional, but are like over 30,000 in the MOI standpoint. So like off the charts MOI, but look don't look like a spaceship on the end of a stick. Um, but they're not realistic because they're much more difficult to make than a traditional putter, so they would have to be way more costly to both produce and then sell. So they're more so like kind of like the golf instruction part. When I was coming up, I chose everything based on opportunity and learning experience, not on money. And I always figured if you're good at what you do, money's going to take care of itself. And to me, the putter thing
Yeah,
is
that's
like
right.
me figuring out ways to do things that, like, my rule of thumb is if I can get Paul Wood or any of the guys at King to think it is a decent idea or kind of cool, then I'm probably did a decent job. And especially considering the level of
Yeah,
equipment that I have is pales in comparison to what they have. Um, but like, yeah, to me, it's the same mindset. It's the hyper competitive, like pushing myself and I think making things, if you can do it, is extremely rewarding. Like to me, creating a golf swing is the same as creating a putter. That's kind of a one-off thing. Is that it's you're building something from start to finish that is tangible, but something not many people can do.
So do you have stuff that people that is actually for sale, or are you just in the early stages?
No, yeah, I sell stuff, usually mostly like custom orders and one-off, and then I have been contact actually after PGA shows, can't really talk about any details, but had some
You told me.
soft,
I won't
yeah,
mention it.
soft manufacturing companies might have asked about the potential of my willingness to design some stuff for them and trying to figure out. Obviously,
Cool.
that takes time away from the golf instruction, so it's kind of like figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, even though I'm grown up. Um, the problem with being good at multiple things is that eventually you do have to choose a direction.
Yep. That's gonna be fun to watch.
Yeah, I feel like there's no bad choice there. Like at no point will I ever stop teaching,
No.
because I love it and care about it. But I might stop taking lessons from the 45-year-old 20 handicap that wants an emergency lesson before the member guests and might kind of restrict it to current clients only or new clients if a kid like shows determination and like wants to be good. Basically, teach who I want to teach when I want to teach them, kind of.
Yeah. That's the golf teacher's retirement right there. That's the plan. Teach when you want to teach and who you want to teach, not when you have to teach.
Yeah, and luckily I might have that opportunity at a pre-dinosaur age.
There you go. All right. So you got to answer one more question before we close.
Uh,
You ready? And you have no idea what I'm going to ask you because you don't listen to the podcast.
I do not.
So if you had to get a message to the world, to billions of people, and put it on a billboard, what would your billboard say and why?
Assume positive intent. Um, I think someone who could be reactionary and emotional, like most people. I think, as a general rule, most people mean well, even if things don't turn out that way. And I think everything would work a little bit better if you just assumed that even if somebody messed up, it wasn't out of spite or on purpose, it was an accident. And I think everything would work more cohesively if people could kind of embrace that mentality.
I like it. Appreciate it, my man. I enjoyed this so much. I appreciate your time
No
and
problem. Glad I could
keep
do
up
it.
the great work, my man. You're awesome.
You too.
Absolutely.